Hello, I'm Kayleigh.
Hello, and I'm Barbara.
Nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you too.
Barbara, when were you born?
I was born October the 15th, 1935.
Do you remember the start of the war?
I remember things happening on the radio, and because there was no television then, there was just radio, and my parents were very upset.
Where were you living?
In Hockley Brook in Birmingham.
Were you evacuated?
Yes, I was evacuated to Evesham at the age of 5.
What was it like?
It wasn't really nice for me. I was 5, and my sister was 8, and we was evacuated to Evesham, and the people weren't very nice to us. Shortly after I went on the evacuation, as a 5-year-old, I started wetting the bed, and each time I wet the bed, I got lashes on the backs of my legs with a belt. Sometime after that, the man of the house said that I couldn't sleep in his bed anymore, that I'd have to go into like a cubby hole, and I was on a bag of straw with a pillow and a blanket, and that's where I had to sleep. And it's played on my mind ever since. But my sister was 8, and she was able to ride home to my parents. And in September of 41, Mum fetched us home and said that, you know, we'd see the rest of the war all together. If we was going to go, we'd all go together. So that was a relief for me to come home, but it's haunted me because I wet the bed till I was 15 through the evacuation. When we came home, we were lucky that we had another little brother. He was born on June the 2nd, and in December of the same year he had pneumonia and he died. That was the first upset, another upset that I had in my life. And then my auntie Dora was bombed out and her son was killed, 19 months old. And then in July 1942, I can remember being in the shelter, and my mum got out of the shelter, which was most unusual, and she didn't come back, and I couldn't understand where my mum had gone because I'd been evacuated. I was very close to my mum. I wouldn't let her out of my sight, if you could understand that. And then when the all clear went, we was taken into a neighbour's house, but I didn't know what had happened. In the afternoon, I believe it was the afternoon, the neighbour took us over home, and my mum was sitting in the chair, and there was some neighbours round my mum, with like smelling salts or what I can imagine it was. But I, as a 5-year-old, I thought my mum was going to die. But what it was, on the evening when Dad come home from work, she got all of us together and said that Gran and Grandad had been killed the following night. So she just said that they'd gone to heaven. That was the way she told us. It wasn't until later that I found out that they were killed.
Who were your grandparents and what actually happened to them?
My nan was named Louisa Gregory and my granddad was Harry Gregory. And all the war, they did never come out of the house. They always used to say they were going to go, they would go together. But that particular night, the wardens fetched them out, and they had to go down an entry and across the road to another entry to get to the shelter. But while they were crossing the road, a bomb dropped and killed them both outright. But my auntie Daisy, who lived at the bottom of the entry, was with them, and she was stone deaf to the day she died. And my cousin, who was 2 at the time, had shrapnel in his legs, and he's got the marks to this day. And my cousin Jimmy. But that was the night they were killed, 28th of July 1942.
Where did your grandma live?
Rosebery Street in Brookfields. And it was at the top of the road, and there was a canal running across the top. And down the bottom end there was a tram garage, and a lot of the people used to shelter in the tram garage as well. But unfortunately there was, I think there was about 6 or 7 killed that night in Nan's Road with the bomb. it was a devastation for me.
And what happened after that?
Well, I can remember the day that they were burying Nan and Grandad, that we were taken by neighbours to be looked after. We weren't allowed to go to the funeral, obviously. But I can always remember every Sunday, for years, all my aunts met at the cemetery and put flowers on the grave in Kayleigh Cemetery. And that one used to get the flowers, and then they all used to pay the money towards the flowers. And I still attend that grave to this day.
You said a cousin was killed. What happened to him?
Well, my aunt had got what they called a table shelter in the house. And when the bomb dropped on my aunt's house, apparently the dust suffocated Alan, who was 19 months old. And he was under this table shelter. And it was 19 months old. It was devastating. The others survived, but Alan died.
What was the date of that raid and where did he live?
I believe it was the 19th of November 1940, and it was in Clissold Street, once again in Brookfield, not far from my grandparents. And it was just devastation. My auntie, because my Uncle Jack was at war, so he wasn't there, but Alan died.
Do you remember what happened during air raids?
Yes, we can remember that Mum used to leave our coats and shoes ready every night, ready for us to put on as we got up out of bed and went across to the shelter. It was in the lady facing the neighbour's garden. It was all comfortable in there because they made it comfortable for us. But it wasn't very nice. There was a certain smell, I can still smell that to this day. It was a smell that you don't forget. But you just sit there and wait for the all prayer. But you do try to sleep, but you never did. I didn't.
Did you eat anything in the shelter?
And that really, we'd always got a hot drink. Mum always tried to help us with that, you know. And like as I say, we also had a bucket, if you like, for the other end, which you had to do, you know. But they tried to make us as comfortable as they possibly could. I know my mum did, and the neighbours did as well, because they hadn't got any youngsters. You know.
What was your worst raid?
I think it was a 13-hour raid. I never thought it was going to come to an end, and I thought any minute we're going to go, and you think you're all going to die, you know, you think, is it our turn? Because you never knew when you got out of the shelter whether you got any houses, you know. It's just one of those things that you never forget, and it's always on your brain. No. But no, it was the worst night, I think, the 13-hour raid.
What was it like the day after the raids?
When you just got out of the shelter and just didn't know what to expect, who to see. You'd get up and you'd go to school the next day, look around, see how many friends you'd still got. I can remember going into school one morning, and I can even see my headmaster to this day, Mr. Marjorie, his name was, and he said that he'd called us for assembly and said that he'd got some sad news to say that the Edwards family, who'd lived just along from us, had been killed. And it was the grandmother, the mother, and 4 little brothers. And he had a special assembly for that. No. But you never knew whether your friends were going to be there or not. And that was devastating.
What school did you go to?
Burbridge Street. It was in Bridge Street West. So it was just over the road for us, you know. It was a lovely school. I mean, I started there at 4 in the nursery, and my first nursery teacher was Miss Cavill. And I went through that school, infants and juniors in Burbridge Street. And then I went to Loser Street Girls' School. But no, I had a good time at school. I really did enjoy school. I wasn't very clever, well, but I was bright, but not as bright as some.
What was school like in wartime?
It was, it was not much difference. The fact that you just was aware of the things you had to do in case there was a daytime raid, because there were some daytime raids, and you had to practice putting your gas mask on. You could never go to school without your gas mask. You always had to carry it with you. But no matter how long you was in the shelter of a night, you still had to go to school. It's like my dad. My dad wasn't in the war because he got a heart defect because he had rheumatic fever. He was a fire watched, and he used to be up all night through the raids, but still went to work the next morning. But was going back to school, I can remember like Mr. Marjorison, Mr. Warriner, Mr. Brumley, all my teachers I can remember more, you know. And even in senior school was Miss Rains in Lowesdale Street School, and she was wonderful. She was a wonderful teacher, headmistress rather. I never got into any trouble at all. So, you know, I had a good upbringing, really, you know, considering what we went through in the war. I mean, we didn't go without much food, you know. Mum did her best, whatever. We always had a nice hot meal every day.
How did rationing affect you?
Well, we just muddled in with whatever we could get. There was a shop over the road where the lady made her own toffee, and it was in like circles, and she used to break it up. But because she made it herself, she didn't have to have ration, you know, she didn't have to take the coupons. And would you believe, when I did Armed Forces Day this year, I spoke to her granddaughter. And I just couldn't believe it, because like, she did a lot for the community, because it helped with the rationing. I know my mum, I can remember my mum, I was going up Great King Street to get the best butter, because she liked going to Mr. Morrison's, because Mr. Morrison's was a shop where the butter was cut off a big block and it was put into greaseproof paper, but you'd never taste butter like it. It was absolutely beautiful. And to have it on toast was lovely. Yeah. She used to toast the bread by the fire on a fork and put the butter on. It's lovely. But you know, it did like that butter.
What did you do in your spare time?
Night times, Mum used to like us to do, we used to make rugs, and Mum used to cut the materials. We used to use bodgers to make a rug. That was night, in the evening. But in the daytime, we'd have skipping rope, and we could play in the horse road then. I mean, you don't know what a horse road is. We could still call it a horse road.
Yeah.
And we can play hopscotch, and I always loved a top and whip. And I used to chalk the top of my top in different colours, so they looked pretty when I did it. And we used to play hide and seek, and I've got a lot of friends, you know, that we went to school with that lived in the area, and we had a lot of fun, really, in the daytime. Yeah. We did play a lot of games. It was fun. Then as I got older, it was kiss and chase. But we won't talk about that. With my whip and top, I used to chalk on the top of my top first with pretty colours. And I used to wind the string around the top. I used to put it on the floor, then pull my whip away, and the top would go all around and spin, and all the pretty colours and stuff like that. So, but I did enjoy my whip and top. It was fun.
What was it like at the end of the war?
I could just remember everybody coming out and cheering, and everybody hugging each other, and everybody was singing, and there was parties in the streets, and they arranged to make bringing pianos out in the gardens and playing the piano, and everything was happy, and it was just so different. And everybody got together and were happy, always helping each other. I mean, anybody that come from there, everybody would join in and help anybody. That was the end of the war. But we did have a big party in Bridge Street West, where the tables were laid in the street, and everybody put so much into the party, and we went until, well, after midnight, I think, when we had the party. We carried that on for a couple of 3 years after, I think, celebrations on a certain date. I wasn't all good, you know. I did like to climb, and I can remember once, I shouldn't tell you this really, but I did climb onto the roof once, and I couldn't get down, so that I fed the fire brigade to get me down. I was on the school roof above all places. But I think it was just attention seeking. I think I was a bit of an attention seeker, because other siblings came along after the war, and I think because of the situation with being evacuee, I don't know, I think it was a little bit of attention seeking. I didn't look at it like that then, but now you look at it, and yes, I was an attention seeker for my mum. My mum more than anybody. Just wanted her attention all the time, whether it be a slap or a kiss. I just wanted her attention.
Do you look back at the war with a happiness or sadness?
Sadness. I think because of my grandparents and Alan. Well, my grandparents, because I love them so much. And when I go in school, I always say to children, if you've got grandparents, cherish them. I'm a grandmother myself now, a great-grandmother. So you do. I only had one set of grandparents, so it was a trauma for me, and I've lived with that all my life. But to know that their names are on that memorial means everything to me. And if my mum's looking down on me, she'd be proud.
Thank you, it's been really nice talking to you. It's been really interesting listening to your stories.
And thank you as well, darling. It's lovely to know that youngsters want to know about the past, because it is of interest to you. It's your history, and I hope you have a better life than we have had to have. And I hope you never have to go through it. Thank you.